Good morning, members. We have a quorum. So I call to order this meeting. In the 2025 legislative session, as of the previous meeting, we have approved 20 items with a total funding amount of $95 billion. Now, we have 3 papers for discussion today. All are new funding proposals submitted by the administration involving a total amount of $1.1 billion, $44,100,000. If all the proposals are approved, the accumulated amount of projects approved will be 23, involving $91.727 billion, excluding the funding amount of $27.34 billion for land acquisition and computerization program. The total funding amount for public works projects will be $64.38 billion. I remind members, if you have any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, with today's items, please disclose the nature of such interest before you speak in accordance with Rule of Procedures 83A. I also bring to your attention Rule of Procedures 84 concerning voting in matters in which you have direct pecuniary interest in. Item 1. Project 377 EP, a 30-classroom primary school at Area 17, Fanling North New Development Area. PWSC 2025-6, number 10. The paper proposes to upgrade the project's 373 EP to Category A, and it's an estimated cost of $485.5 million in money of the day prices. The government has consulted the panel on education on the 6th of December last year. Members supported the funding proposal and the submission of it for this committee's consideration. The report of the salient point of discussion of the panel has been sent to members via email on the 16th of June this year. Now, all the government officials and the list of officials in today's meeting have been circulated among the members. I welcome the government officials for attending this item. Now, these are the members who would like to ask questions. 8 of them: Mr. Edward Lau, Chen Xiu-hong, Ms. Chen Yut-ming, Mr. Chen Pui-leung, Lam Chen-sing, Robert Lee, Michael Lee, Mr. Stanley Ng, and Mr. Andrew Lam. 4 minutes each, questions and answers included. Mr. Edward Lau. Thank you, Chairman. I support this proposal. The school to be reprovisioned, Pui-ling School of the Precious Blood. It is a school with deep history in the North District. It is quite old, so I think it is suitable to reprovision the school at this new school premises. Now, Area 17, there are some 8,000 public housing units which will be deferred in the same area. So I think this school is quite far away from the position I was talking about. So that may bring some inconvenience to the local population. So there are some new private residential developments as well nearby, for example, One Innovate. So I want to know what is the expected increase in population in the future in the North District, and whether this goal is enough. Now, after moving this school to the new address, what will be the future use for the original site? I don't think that's mentioned in the paper. Under Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Lau. Good morning, members. I thank Mr. Lau for his support for the project. As mentioned by Mr. Edward Lau, the Puiling School at Onlock Estate is already 26 years old. It is just 1,800 square meters in size. It lacks basic facilities. Now, because of the limitation of the size, there is no room for enhancing the infrastructure of the school. So by reprovisioning the school, we can improve the teaching and learning environments for students. Concerning Mr. Lau's question on the new development area in Fanling North, after full developments, there will be an additional 95,000 population. Now that's a key project in the Northern Metropolis. About the 8,300 public housing units to be delayed, that's not part of the Fanling North new development area. The 95,000 additional population has nothing to do with the deferred units. So the 95,000 additional population should be accurate. Now about Fan Garden in Fanling. It is also located in Area 17, but it is not quite the same. About the use of the old school premise. After reprovisioning, the original school site will not be used for primary or secondary school purposes. The site will be returned to the relevant bureau or departments for review. So the use is not confirmed so far. No, Chairman. Now with member support today, the release site will be submitted for review of use. Chairman, I know that the additional population is 95,000, but at this stage, or after reprovisioning of the school, when will the population intake take place? This original school site is in the industrial estate, and there is a playground nearby. So I hope that a study on future land use will be conducted soon. Thank you. Please convey this message to the Development Bureau. So what about timetable? Chairman, the first batch of population intake in Area 17 will be in 2026 to 27. After 3 years' time, in 2028 to 29, where the new school is completed, there will be some 20,000 people in the new development area. Population intake will take place in phases. So this new school is necessary because we hope that students can go to school nearby. Next, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Thank you, Chairman. Concerning the construction of this 30-classroom primary school at Area 17 in Fanling North, this is a standard design. And the next project, another 30-classroom primary school in Anderson Road. Now the return tender price for both projects are both some $500 million. Now, several months ago, we discussed two projects in Area 89 in Tongchong and 29 in Pudong. Those are also schools of similar sizes. Now, the prices for those projects were $600 million. This time around, the price tag is cheaper. So there is a great drop in the number of projects in the private market. So public works projects are a lifeline for the private developers. So the market is not very active. So according to both papers, it seems that the per unit cost for the projects is $25,000. So both projects will adopt MIC or maybe MIMAP for escalators or lifts and other installations. So where does the cost saving come from? Because I don't see the breakdown. I want to know more about the cost situation for these schools of standard design. Now, I asked a similar question last time. The school in Fanling North and also the school in Anderson Road, or even the school at Kutong North, we have a long line of schools to be reprovisioned. So have you tendered out, are you going to tender out these two projects altogether? If we are tendering out the school projects in one go, including 4 schools, since they are all 30 classroom schools and with a standard designs, maybe we can achieve some economies of scale by bulk tendering them. So have you considered this option? Undersecretary. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Chen. I will give a consolidated reply and invite the the Architectural Services Department to supplement. Yes, these 2 school projects today are cheaper than those before by some $100 million. That's because of the situation of these construction sites and also the limitations or restrictions. For the project in Tongchong, the base rock is much deeper from the ground level, and also the geographical composition is more complex. The loading capacity of the bedrock or the soil is lower. That is the same for the situation for the school in Kutong North. The bedrock is deeper, so piles have to be driven deeper. That affected the construction price. For this project in Fanling North, the estimation has been reduced by some $36 million compared with the original proposal. So we have achieved a 7% saving in cost. The return tender price is also lower than our expectation. So that also reflects on the market's situation. Whether we will tender out school projects together in a single tender. Since we are using MIC, maybe if we do this, the overall price tag will be even lower. However, take today's proposal as an example. The 2 schools combined together only require some 300 MIC components. Now this year in particular, we have a larger number of school projects. So usually the components required for schools is lower. Compared with light public housing, it takes 15,000 pieces of MIC components for each project. So I understand that Mr. Chen would like us to try to achieve economies of scale, but it is more difficult for schools. Mr. Fung, please supplement on the situation of tender and also the price tag compared with the two schools before. What's the major difference?
Thank you, Chair. Let me just supplement on those points. Just now, the question on Kutong and Tung Chung, if you look at the total construction cost, it is indeed so that it is higher than this particular project that we have on hand. But if you look at the price difference of $25,000, the reason is because for every site there is different geotechnical situation and constrictions. For Tung Chung, for instance, the soil is less than ideal. Apart from low bedrock, we have done some geotechnical works, and that also constitute part of the cost. For the soil, we had to consolidate it and to enhance its efficacy before we can have the project built, and that's why there were extra costs. As for Kutong, if you remember, the site at the south side of it is higher than the northern side. So there is a semi-settlement or a kind of basement area. And the site was rather narrow. So for fire services facilities, we needed to have extra pumps and other facilities. So it is really because of the site differences and the restrictions of each site, the cost would therefore be different. As for the housing construction, the building construction cost, they are more or less the same, and that would include the MIC, including the classrooms components as well. So for the buildings cost part, it is more or less the same, but it is because of the site differences. There are differences in the overall costs. Now, as for the question whether the four projects could be considered together, for each school, for MIC, there are about 150 components. Times 4 would be 600 components. Compared to the light public housing, it is over 15,000. So it is very small compared to a light PH. So even if we consolidate the four projects, there will not be any economies of scale or synergies. Thank you, Chair. Now, because you have overrun your time allotted, so you wait for the next round, please. Next, we will have Chen Yut-ming. Chair, I'm in support of this proposal. There are at least 3 primary schools for financing. And I'm thinking about lowering of costs through consolidation. Now, MIC is used for the construction of the primary schools, and the cost is more or less the same as traditional methods. Now, for the schools concerned, because of their sites and also because of their overall design, there had been pricing differences. But of course, for primary school libraries, classrooms, and toilets, etc., there are these components as well. And there had been 3 primary schools coming in for funding proposals. Of course, purchasing may have to be consolidated or standardized, and also for some of the development areas, including the Northern Metropolis area, there should be planning for schools, and therefore the government should have the conditions to compress the costs and the relevant purchasing. I would like to see the administration being aware of these possibilities a bit more. Second question is on the northern areas school children. Of course, we want the primary school students to be studying nearby so that they do not have to take school buses. And also, people are moving to the northern territories because of its development. So I'm not worried about the intake. And then there are these 30 classroom standard design primary schools. So there is sufficient flexibility for future development. The Northern Territory, because it is close to Shenzhen, cross-boundary students are numerous, and primary and secondary schools in this area would have these cross-boundary students. And actually, secondary schools have insufficient supply, and it is difficult even for students to join midway. So my question is, will there be a further increase in cross-boundary students? And for the Northern Territory situation, the usage of land for schools, what are some of the flexible measures from the administration? And what about the traffic? Will there be design that would be facilitating cross-boundary students, please? Thank you. First of all, we would want to thank Madam Chan for the support of the project and the two comments. First of all, the purchasing to do it on a consolidated basis. As mentioned just now, we consider the scale issue therein as well. Now, as for the planning of places for students in Northern Territory, we look at it separately, primary and secondary schools. For secondary schools, we look at the entire territory of Hong Kong in its place planning. For cross-boundary students, when it comes to secondary school students, they can perhaps go to schools along the rail system. And also we see that there is less cross-boundary students, and the students would come through to Hong Kong through different checkpoints. Apart from Northern Territory, Tuen Mun, Yuen Long, Tai Po would also have cross-boundary students. So I can tell members that we will closely monitor the situation concerning cross-boundary students studying in Hong Kong. For primary schools, there are still some places we see. So there are still vacancies for certain schools, and some of the schools do not have the full number of classes. So there is still some space. So we will closely monitor the situation. Next, Chan Pui Leung. Thank you very much, Chair. And I am in principle supportive of this project because the original school is over 65 years in age, and we need reprovisioning. Otherwise, the original school itself will have to use a lot of resources to enhance its facilities. So this is a positively impactful project, and thank you the administration for the explanations. Now I'm looking at the site maps. There are 18 classrooms which will be increased to 30, housed in 3 stories. So each story will have 10 classrooms. So this is the future plan. But still, with over 10 classrooms added, and with the development in the area, perhaps it will come to a point where the development would be mature or saturated. Have you ever considered perhaps that we have 20 classrooms, so 2 stories instead of 3, and it is like 10 or 8 years after that the relevant neighborhood and area would be mature. So rather than to wait for students to fill the extra 10 classrooms, you build 20 classrooms in the interim. Have you ever thought of that? Well, thank you for the question. Pui Ling School now has 18 classrooms, and it would be 12 more if we add the extra classrooms to 30. Now, 25 students per class, and it would be actually about 300 plus places in this primary school that is added and distribute amongst the 6 years of primary school. Each year would be 2 classes. So each year would have less than 100 student places added. And that's not a lot. Now, for the Fanling North new development area, when there is total population intake, it will be over 95,000 residents increase in the area. So we also have other sites that we have reserved where there is need that we may have to add new schools even. So we are confident that this particular newly provisioned school will have sufficient student source to run a 30-classroom school to serve the people within that area. Thank you. Next, Lam Chen Sing. Thank you, Chair. I'm in support of this project. First of all, I would like to know about the neighborhood to the north of this site. The egress is in Marfolk Road. Now, theoretically, after this school had been completed, on three sides of the school, there are still construction sites. Some are leveling of land, and then there is another secondary school which may be in construction, and then there is also public housing being constructed. So I would like to know the progress of these works. For some of the works, can you perhaps complete those as soon as possible? Because we do not want to see a situation where this primary school is completed and the students are studying in it, and all around on three sides there are long-term works being carried out. So the environment is not ideal for the students of this school, and coming in and out of the school area, it would not be ideal with constructions all around. That's the first question. Secondly, about macro planning for future development. The number of students in the area, that's a question. Apart from talent schemes, there is another scheme for talents which is 10,000 in terms of quota for under 40-year-olds. And in a few years, these will be Hong Kong residents. Let's say 1/3 of these would be parents of primary school students, and that would work out to be 2,000 to 3,000 in total. So have you planned for the number of primary school students going forward, and how are you planning for the requisite primary schools, please? A third question, which had been asked by Chen Pui Leung just now, for 30 classrooms, if the school falls short in terms of student intake, one possibility is to build in stages. But if you build 30 classrooms and only 18 are in use, 12 are unused, so would there be use for the community? Let's say community organizations can use these extra empty classrooms instead of leaving them vacant. Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the support from Mr. Lam and also the three questions. For the schools, after they are completed, the construction sites around the school, would that affect the students of the school once it is completed? Now, on the west of the school, it is a sports ground, and on its east, as Mr. Lam pointed out, is a secondary school. We will be going back as soon as possible because the concern is valid. We will be looking at this particular site for building of a secondary school, whether it would affect the primary school students. Yes, we will look at that as soon as possible. Where necessary, we will, where resources permit, we will try to start the construction work of the secondary school ASAP so as to minimize the impact on the primary school students who will be studying in this school. And also for the talent schemes and importing new workers or manpower for certain industries, labor import, etc., into Hong Kong. Well, under different schemes, for the new population intake where it represents increased demand for our school places, we will be ascertaining that the places will be sufficient.
Third question about the 12 classrooms. Now, when classes are taking place in the school, it is more difficult to lease the 12 classrooms for other organizations' use. It would give rise to security and safety issues, and it may also affect the normal learning of students. The situation would be different after school. The Fanling School is willing to open up their campus for lease to sports groups and other groups after school hours, and also for community organizations' use. So that would not be a problem after school hours. So in terms of the demand, I think the Undersecretary has said that he has confidence that the 30 classrooms will not be underutilized. So demand has been considered by the Education Bureau. Next, Mr. Michael Lee. Thank you, Chairman. There were reports that the Housing Department would delay the delivery of the 8,300 public housing units near Fan Garden. So I really hope that will not affect the population intake of the 95,000 additional population expected. Now, the two school premises are only 5 minutes ride away, so it will not affect the willingness of existing students to move to the new school. Now, like other members have said, right next to this school site, there is a site proposed for a new secondary school. So maybe we can have a through train arrangement for these two schools. Now there is a 300 square meters lawn in the school. So maybe we can use the site for educational purposes, for example, teaching students how to grow crops or plants. Thank you. Concerning the secondary school site next to the primary school, we will review the use of the site. Now, concerning the through train arrangements, we operate on the principle of fairness. So we do not make the promise to the Fanling School that they would be able to get the school site adjacent to their site. But of course, we would let the school sponsoring body to consider whether this would be a viable option. The timetable for constructing the secondary school is important because that would depend on the overall school places demand in the entire area. Now, in terms of using the lawn for agricultural purposes or planting purposes, we do encourage schools to fully utilize their school spaces. Using the lawn to Using the lawn for greenery purposes can help students understand the importance of ecosystem and also of biology. So we will let the school to decide how to use the lawn. Next, Mr. Stanley Ng. Thank you, Chairman. From my understanding, to upgrade the teaching and learning environments and facilities of those schools, that is the most effective way is to reprovision it. So I support the proposal. However, the paper doesn't explain the relationship between the additional population and also the demand for school places. I think the Education Bureau needs to explain to us what the source of students will be. And also we need to know the overall layout of primary schools in the same area, Area 17. So there will be more classes after reprovisioning of schools. The number of students in each class is not a lot. But from the perspective of student source, I think we need more explanation. So in today's meeting, we are discussing the proposals for 2 schools. Since we have so many projects being implemented at the same time, the government has a very good bargaining position in terms of cost saving. So can the government tell us what it has done to save cost? I think both questions have been asked before. Still, I will invite the Undersecretary to explain the situation of student enrollments and population structure. Thank you. The additional population in Area 17, Fanling North NDA will be 95,000. So according to the HKPSG, there has to be a school in the same area to facilitate schooling of children among the new population. Concerning how many primary students will there be in the area in the future, I think we can only make a more accurate estimation when it is closer to population intake. But according to the HKPSG, with an expected population of 95,000 people, we may need more than 1 primary school in the same area. So the demand is definitely justified. Broadly speaking, if there are, say, 3% among the 95,000 population who are primary students, then you can imagine that there will be thousands of school places demand in the area. So even by moving this school to the new area, there is only 12 additional classrooms. So we think the estimation is well within the safety margin. So we are confident that there will be sufficient number of students to support the long-term development of the school. On whether we will tender out school projects in a lump sum to enhance our bargaining power, while the next project at Anderson Road we did try to tender out this school project together with a secondary school nearby in the same tender, but we did not receive a satisfactory returned tender. There were many factors. So this is something we have tried before. So as I said, by using MIC, if we tender out the projects in a single lot, the amount of cost saved may not be significant because we are already using MIC. But we will consider any options which can save cost. I think Mr. Stanley Ng asked a question about the policy on population analysis. So I hope that you will conduct more analysis on the student population by using big data. The population structure has a direct impact on the demand for primary and secondary school places. That's a policy matter. And we all want the cost to be lower, but still, we can't ignore the realities in the market, especially the difficulties in the operation of SME businesses. They are not capable of taking on massive projects. The amount of workload, the amount of works in the private market has reduced as well. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Well, rather than question, I have 2 points to make about the overall price tag. The Undersecretary has said several times already. So 3 months ago, there were 2 schools in Tung Chung, some $590 million for each school. So these 2 cost some $500 million. So we are happy about the $100 million saved, but that's because of the market situation only. So I've asked several times about the standard for opting for MIC construction. Now, if the designs are massively different for each school, it would be difficult to achieve any saving from MIC because you need to make the molds for components from scratch. Now, mold making does not take place locally. So can we order or procure MIC molds by adopting a more simplified design for schools without so many frills? You are telling me that MIC is not that much cheaper than the conventional construction method, but one would assume that MIC is much cheaper in time. So from the perspective of cost control, I hope that you would consider the overall strategy as the conception stage or the initial design stage for schools. Now, I like the new price, but in the breakdown, there is an item recurrence for recurrent expenditure. Now, aided school is different from direct subsidy scheme schools. For aided school, the amount of funding is calculated based on the number of classrooms. So this aid is not for building of school campus. This is just for daily maintenance and also utility fees and so on. So this is not a factor to be considered by the PWSC, so to speak, but I would like to ask this question as well. Thank you. Concerning MIC, like Mr. Lam said, the difference in price or cost is not that big compared with conventional method, but there are other benefits. For example, better performance in construction site safety, less wastage, and also less manpower demand for manpower and less impact on the nearby environment. Now, at the design stage for this project, we have adopted the MIC method. Because we think that by using MIC, we can make the project safer and more efficient. Now, the ArchSD is now studying how we can adopt MIC without impacting on the flexibility of design. And for more mundane features like classrooms and toilets, we can standardize the design so as to reduce wastage and make it more cost effective and lower the overall cost for the projects. And about recurrent expenditure, Mr. Andrew Lam is correct. For direct subsidy scheme school, compared with an aided school, the maximum headcount in each class is higher. So providing that other conditions remain the same, including 30 classroom, school, the amount of recurrent funding each year for a direct scheme for a DSS school is much higher. For example, in the next item, the funding for that school would be higher, even though these are both 30 classroom primary schools. So of course, the funding can also be used on daily maintenance and repair, but that's not the main purpose.
Yes, of course, we should look into how we should best use MIC, that being a direction. But my personal view is, how do we make MIC design itself more flexible? So that is to say, in producing the mode, how can we standardize that? Perhaps we should look into that. All right, the next member is Chu Kung. Just to declare, I am the chair of the Northern Territory Principals Association, and also I'm myself a principal of a school. Now, this particular school is small in terms of space, and it is relatively old, so reprovisioning is called for. So I'm in support of that. Now, for the EDB, they're often wrong in projecting the population. Some years ago, there were 30 schools closed, but after the non-residents, Hong Kong residents came to Hong Kong, there was a shortfall of school places. And then as some also another incident where some schools were completed, such as in Queen's Hill, there was a mismatch of places again, and still the impact is felt. And in my area, there are still the shortfall of students. A number of schools only have 1 to 2 classes of P1 intake. It's fine to have a estimate of students, but in the future, if we find that the EDB is wrong again in its population estimate, what can be done? Perhaps just now it was mentioned 3% times 95,000. Not all these students would be P1 students. So you divide it among the 6 years, it is only 4 classes. And Also, for some of the other areas, the population would actually drop, not increase. So I'm really worried whether this population or student intake projection is correct. It may be too high. Now, another question, I'm looking at the fourth story, the plan there. There is a school staff quarters. Now, this is very different from other schools in the planning. Other schools would have a lower profile area and the configuration would be different. So is this really quarters for the janitors of the school? Well, first of all, Chair, I thank Mr. Yu for the support of the project. As for the estimates for Queen's Hill, as an example, for Queen's Hill, you would remember that after we have completed the two schools, it was more or less the same time as a population intake of the two housing estates. So a lot of the residents of the two estates would want to send their children to the schools in that housing estate because it takes time for transport every day going to school, and that is not desired. And we have discussed and communicated with the Principals Association of the Northern Territory, and after taking in their comments, we have made some planning adjustments. And also we will continue to listen to the views of the education field. For the Puiling School, after reprovisioning, the principles for classes, opening of classes, would still be the same, and that is we will have regard to the population and the students' intake projections. But we must not forget that Puiling already has its own students. The original P1 to P6 students would go to the newly provisioned school. We must not forget that. So 2 years from now, there will be 20,000 in addition for population. And after that, we project a total of 95,000 population increase in that area. So this will bring on new places demand for schools. There is that demand. Now, you talked about the quarters for janitors on the fourth floor. I will go back to find out more, and I will supplement this to the subcommittee afterwards. Mr. Louis Lung, for this particular primary school with 30 classrooms, reprovision this school in place of a 65-year-old campus with 18 classrooms. One cannot find any reason not to support this proposal, I'd say. And I'm looking at the design of the school in the plans. It is quite standard. The only difference is that in different site areas, because of the site formation, that there are certain adjustments. And I do not see any comments I need to make there as well. So I'm in support. But there is just one question I would like to seek some information on. I'm looking at paragraph 10I of the paper. There is this line, consultant's fee. Consultant's fee for contract administration and management of resident site staff. That is $11.9 million. For this consultant's fee, I have no problems with that. However, when I look at the next document, and that is the Anderson Quarry Site school proposal, for that particular proposal, it is internal staff. who is responsible for contract administration, etc. And of course, the cost would be much lower. And I understand that for external consultants versus internal staff, the latter would still attract opportunity costs. So I'm not questioning that arrangement. I just want to understand under what conditions would you grant a consultant's arrangement, and what conditions would you use internal staff, please? That's my question. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Leung, for the support to the proposal and the item. For consultants, every project is different. In deciding whether we want to hire a consultants firm, the ASD would consider the internal staff resources and also the individual project's needs. If we see that there is such a need and we want more hands or human resources to help with the project, then a consultant can be hired. For hiring of consultant during the construction period, the consultant can add flexibility, and through this external force, one can carry out or smoothen the construction of the project. Well, I totally understand, and that is normal, and I think these two arrangements can be carried out according to needs. But as Mr. C had mentioned very well, if we can map out the conditions and clarify the conditions and also build a system within the department as to when you hire external consultants, when you go internal, then even for the audit department going forward, they will have a better outcome when auditing your work. That's just a suggestion. Next is Lillian Kwok. Yes, I'm also in support of this project. This is a school of 65 years of history, and indeed the campus, etc., will not be able to meet modern-day needs. Now, for the walking distance between the original school and the new school, it is but 15 minutes, so it should be able to support the original area that the original school serves. And also there are a number of new public housing estates to be built around the area, so in the long term there would be this need. I would like to ask a question, though. There are more and more of these new public housing estates being built in the area. Is it sufficient for there to be a 30-classroom school? Is it sufficient? Because these are major public housing estates, and the original students would also be staying with the school. And also in Lo Wu, I know there is some 6,000 cross-boundary students studying there. They very much want to study in Hong Kong, but because of lack of conditions, they're not able to do so. So my question is, for Hong Kong students, even they are separated from their parents, how can we allow them to study in Hong Kong? Can there be certain quarters provided to them, for example? And another question concerning the planning and there is of the school campus, there is a electric vehicle charging station. Now, I've talked about this time and again. For this charging facility, Why cannot we house it elsewhere? As I have mentioned in the first year when we discussed the first project, I'm still talking about the same thing. And for the repairs and maintenance of the schools, you can also put in this electric vehicle charging facilities. We do not want to see a situation where these are the schools without these facilities, and the schools are forbidden to add this particular vehicle charging facility in the schools. I think we should move with the times so that there will be some new policy with regards to provisioning electric vehicle charging facilities in schools.
Now, consultancy fee is $2 million for previous projects, but for this one, it is $10 million. So you said you may engage a third-party independent consultant or have your in-house consultant. So what's your standard for deciding which one to go for and who would be making this decision? Under Secretary. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Lillian Kwok, for your support. Concerning consultancy fee, I will invite the ASD to reply. Ms. Kwok mentioned her concern about whether a 30-classroom school is sufficient. This is something that we have a lot of discussion about in the academia as well. Say, for example, at Sheung Road in Taipo, there was a new school commissioned last year. It's sort of a massive school, a 36-classroom one. So most schools are not as big as that one. So whenever there is a larger school in the area, there would be concern about the situation of student intake. So if we can identify substantive need for a school in the area, and one school may suffice for accommodating the demand, then from a cost effectiveness point of view, a one larger school may be more cost effective or cost efficient than two smaller schools. So in the future, when we are planning for schools, we will consider Ms. Lillian Kwok's views. I will invite the RJSD to reply to the question on consultancy fee and electric charging pole. Now, on electric charging facilities or EV charging facilities, there will be some 50 parking spaces with charging facilities. That's in line with the latest circular issued by the government. So there will be EV charging facilities. There are 5 private car parking spaces with EV charging features. But Ms. Kwok's question was about other schools in terms of the policy. Is there a plan to increase the number of EV charging facilities? We will review the situation of each individual school. Additional works may be involved in installing charging poles. They may be complicated, so we will review them according to the individual circumstances. Chairman, allow me to supplement. I was asking the government to update the standard for school allocation. Since we are updating other standards as well, I think this standard needs to be updated. Yes, planning standard. I think the planning standard reflects on the actual needs of society because they would change according to, they would change in time. Ms. Athena Fong, whether we engage a third-party consultant or not depends on the availability of internal manpower resources. sometimes there are many projects being rolled out at the same time. If we consider that internal manpower resources are insufficient, we would engage an independent consultant. But before that, we would seek the support from the Policy Bureau first. Now, by engaging a consultancy firm, it would give us more flexibility in terms of manpower. Because when the number of projects dropped, we will have to assign new tasks to the existing teams. So by engaging an independent consultancy firm, the situation will be more flexible. Next, Mr. Kisan Yang. Chairman, I support this project because the additional population intake in the area is sufficient for reprovisioning the Fanling School of the Precious Blood. However, since the Housing Authority announced the cancellation or delay of the delivery of the 85,000 PRH units, I became concerned. So I do not object to this proposal, but whether I support or not depends on whether the Undersecretary can reassure me. Now please refer to Annex 5. According to the layout, now the 8,300 PRH units will be to be cancelled. Now the areas are different, but if you look at the map on Annex 5, the site is at the peripheral area near Fan Garden. It's just one street apart. So there is a real impact from the cancellation of the 8,300 units. Now, public housing estates are an important source of students. Without the 8,300 units, I'm worried about population or students intake. Now, geotechnical situation, I don't think the geotechnical conditions would be that different. There are a lot of private housing estates with another PRH work site. Now, the high cost of construction may impact upon the schedule of population intake. When do you expect population intake will happen? And that is a different concept from birth rate. So how high the birth rate must be for these 95,000 people to be able to support your school? Now, as mentioned by Mr. Sai Kung, the student intake situation in the area is not very ideal. Near the work site, for example, there is another school with 18 classes, Fanling, and another school, 18 classes, and Fanling Public Government School, 16 classes. The number of their classes fall well short of the maximum number, that is 24. Now, for Fanling Precious Blood School, the total number of students is 484. So for each class, there would be some 27 students. So the maximum head count of each class is not fulfilled. So do we need such a large school? Even without a new school premise, the existing school can absorb the additional number of students. The worst case scenario would be, after the new school is built, there will be insufficient student intake, and then you have to reduce classroom numbers or even cancel the school. Can you confirm that we will have sufficient birth rates in the future among the population to support to justify the school? Without the delivery of the 83,000 PRH units, I'm very concerned. And population intake or population structure is a question asked by many members. Now, after all, estimates are just estimates. So, can the Undersecretary tell us how did you arrive at a more accurate estimation? Thank you. There will be an additional 95,000 population in the Fanling North NDA. That doesn't include the proposed 8,300 PRH units in the same area. The 95,000 additional population in the Fanling North NDA is real. The first batch of population intake will be in 2026 to 27. And in the same NDA, there are other public and private housing projects as well. Mr. Kissen Young assumed that the entire area has similar geotechnical conditions. Now, I don't claim to be an expert, but I don't think that presumption is justified. The actual geotechnical condition for each site is subject to professional assessment. Since there is going to be 95,000 additional population in the NDA, that would bring real demand for school places under the principle of schooling nearby. Now, Mr. Yang mentioned the Puiling School. There is only 18 classrooms. There is only 18 classes because there are only 18 classrooms. Now, since the locations of the schools are different, the situation is different as well. There are 3 school nets in the entire North District. Now, we don't necessarily encourage students to go to schools in another school net. And as mentioned before, there are cross-boundary students in the North District, so there is higher demand in school places in the same district. So we hope members will support our proposal. Mr. Tang Fei, I support this project because the North District will be part of the Northern Metropolis in the future, and we expect a spike in population in the area. So we do support school premises with larger spaces and a more environmental friendly setting. Now, whenever there is a new school premises, especially when new schools are even more luxurious than old schools, compared with pre-millennial schools, under what conditions can a school sponsoring body apply for new school premises, and under what conditions would an old school site be used? Now, about the photovoltaic system is mentioned in the map or the layout. Now, actually, the water recycling system is not something new. There are some schools with this system as well. However, photovoltaic panels, this is something new. So the major electricity cost item is air conditioning but not lighting. So how will photovoltaic panel help? So lastly, my suggestion, can we introduce more energy-saving technologies in schools? Some 20 years ago, we were still using the so-called electricity efficiency labeling system of the EMSD. That's archaic. So can we require all schools to introduce measures like calculation of ESG and carbon footprint to protect the environment and save energy? That would be a good education for students as well.
第一個咧，似乎
Thank you very much. The first one is a policy question. Can you respond succinctly? The other is an environment question, which is relevant to what we're dealing with on hand. Well, first of all, thank you for the support for the project, and there are 3 questions there. First of all, for new schools, even though the design may be rather special, but we try to make it practical as well. And for practical use, that is the principle for design. And this is a reprovisioning of school. For the different areas in Hong Kong, there is a surplus of school places, actually. So what we try to achieve is not to increase the number of schools. That is our main consideration. Where there is a necessity to build new school campuses, we try to move or reprovision existing schools. That is our guiding principle. Now, when it comes to photovoltaic facilities, etc., my colleague will answer that question later. As for decreasing carbon footprint and enhancing conservation in the schools, together with the environmental department, we have a green campus scheme whereby we encourage conservation and also to minimize waste for teaching purposes, but at the same time, we promote students' understanding of biodiversity and other works related to green campuses. We are working on that together with Environment and Ecology Department. Right. As for paragraph 26 in the document, from A to C, these are energy-related or conservation of energy-related technologies. So this is like the 2021 conservation of energy, which is 10% decrease or conservation in energy of the total usage. As for the photovoltaic systems, these are rooftop panels which can take in the solar energy and convert it to energy for use in the school. And again, this is in accordance with the technical notification from the relevant departments. And this is no less than 3% of the total usage of energy for that particular campus. That is the photovoltaic system we're talking about. Mr. Kenneth Falk. Thank you, Chair. I have a question which actually applies to both projects for the 2 schools, but first on Fanling. First of all, the campuses can be used for outside need. In 2017, there was a report on public or government schools being open to non-profit-making community organizations for use. So, and a second point on sports. Now, I have asked the schools, and the administration would understand. For the schools, they say with less subsidy, I need to fork out more money to hire security guards, etc. So the schools are trying to minimize on their work. This is fine in terms of the direction. But now that we have a new campus, can we do a little bit more? What I'm referring to is that, especially for the sports grounds of the schools, they are slightly separate from the core facilities of the campus. For example, it's a little bit away from the classrooms. So they can be separately managed, can't they, for renting out? Now, I see from this plan that the sports ground is actually in the lower right-hand corner, so it can be an independent site. It's near the vehicle exit. Now, I can't see it very clearly from this site map, but perhaps there can be certain gates installed so as to separate these uncovered areas from the main campus so that the schools would find it easier to manage if they should rent out these sports grounds, for example, in the future. Would this make it more flexible for the schools, for this Fanling school and for other schools? So for this scheme for renting out school facilities or campus facilities. Thank you for the question. For Puiling and Luk Hing To schools, during our communication with the two schools, they have said that they would participate in the opening up of the campus to promote sports and physical education. So not only for the sports ground, but also for the school hall and other activities room. After school, they can be open to qualified non-profit making organizations or relevant community organizations. The question, of course, was not just about these two schools, but to facilitate the management of the schools, because the schools are rightfully concerned about opening up the campus, not just for these two schools. There are other schools who are in the scheme are also considering the same. So how we can provide facilitation to the schools, we have to think about that. The sports ground is one. I also know that some sports organizations actually hire or rent the school hall of the schools or the swimming pools of the schools where there are swimming pools. Now, for the main building of the school, such as where the school hall is situated, it's very difficult to have a gate or a door to separate the core school facilities from the facility concerned. Let's say, for instance, for toilets, those going to the activity will have to go to the toilets, for example, and so they will have to go into different areas of the school all the same. So we have to come up with measures to facilitate the school so that they can effectively hire out their facilities to outside community organizations. Well, Chair, just now the school hall was mentioned. Perhaps a school hall can be used for storage of materials of the art troops, for example. I'm just thinking that since we have the scheme, we should follow up on it. Yes. So in terms of design, perhaps something can be worked out, something extra, so that the schools can open up for public or community use. Next, Lo Ai Kwok. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm in support of this project because as the different areas of Hong Kong experience population change, the aged areas are aging increasingly, and there are less school children. And for other areas, there are new families moving in with more demand for primary school places. This is something of a fact. Population changes is a fact. So there will have to be adjustments. And in particular, for this particular project, it is reprovisioning a primary school. And we hope that the schools that are well run can continue to operate. So this is a good arrangement. Now, even for these new development areas, the population structure will continue to change. Now, they will need a primary school. Later, they may need a secondary school. For these new schools, have you considered at one point a primary school can be perhaps converted to a secondary school? Of course, we know secondary schools and primary schools would have different facilities, but if we are provisioning a primary school currently, perhaps we can also think about future needs of a secondary school. Perhaps that would be better, rather than to have in the future a number of vacated and empty primary school campuses. Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Loy Kwok, for the support of the project. In building primary and secondary schools, usually the primary schools would have less space. The secondary schools would be more spacious. When we look at some of the vacated school campuses, there are some secondary schools which have been re-provisioned for primary school occupation. Perhaps in the past, for primary schools where we can move that primary school, such as Fanling that we're dealing with today, it has already 65 years of history, and the campus is only 1,800 square meters in size. It's very difficult for it to be used for a secondary school. No, Chair, let's not waste time. I'm not saying this particular primary school to be converted. I'm saying there are new primary schools being built. Perhaps some of the space can be made bigger so that in the future they can be converted into secondary schools. So you're saying provide more space, to make it a bigger site, but members may also worry that the space would not be used in the interim. But it would be better to tear down the primary school and to convert or to build a new secondary school. I'm not sure this is directly related to what's discussed here. Chair, I understand what Mr. Low is referring to. For this particular new school, for example, the space is much larger than the original school. And indeed, there is more space concerned. At present, we have no plans in when this new school will come to an end of its historic mission. We think that perhaps this school will continue to be in operation in this area for decades to come because the space in this school is big enough. For primary school students, yes, the stairs would be less steep, for instance. But in the future, if there is indeed a need, we can perhaps consider that it be converted into a secondary school. So we're talking about flexibility. Well, Chair, this answer is not so negative to my mind. With population structure changes, there may be a need for more secondary schools. So primary schools can well be converted to secondary schools. If you're saying that this newly provisioned school is more spacious than the existing one, then perhaps we can also consider at the building of this new school to provide for secondary schools in the future. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Junius Ho. Well, Chair, I've never opted for forgetting about the past. Now we're spending public money without being very responsible. And the administration is completely rigid in their thinking. So we've come to this stage, and it's very difficult for we to stop the project. But no, I think we should move with the times. 3 points. First of all, Fanling is a 65-year-old school. I've seen many of such schools. Some of the old schools, we sneer on them. These are schools that we don't need anymore, we say. So we need a school with 30 classrooms. And after completing this new school, well, in the old world, there were 40 students to a class. So a school would be 1,200 or 900. Nowadays, schools are 300 and 400 strong only. And for the good schools, people vie to get into it. 500 spaces school, for instance, people are still vying to get into it. You're spending so much money, 400 million, 500 million, irresponsibly spending that money. And your population projection of 95,000 is not accurate, really not so accurate. Sai Kung Member Chu Kung in this panel is saying the same. And now, if you're looking at a school with some history, even though it is an old wife, if you do the makeup, these women of certain age can still be very attractive. There are no ugly women, only women who do not work on it. So if you have a, let's say, $50 million budget, you can already make the school into a very nice one. Now, Mr. Yang Wing-kit had mentioned this. These new schools are monotonous. They have no personality. They have no idiosyncrasy. They are not differentiated. If you want to tear down the old, why do we do conservation? This is a 65-year-old school. You tear it down and you build something that is completely standard. Now, from the works point of view, in the data you have provided, we look at the other 5 schools, they are about $25,000. There's nothing to a school. They are bare shells, just classrooms. Anderson and Kutong North, etc. The cost is so high. Every school is close to $500 million. In this meeting, can you tell me that the soul of Poiling School will disappear? So we have to find a new body in Fanling North. 18,000 square meters is not small a space. In that space, you can nurture good students. But I do not see from the Public Works Subcommittee meeting today, you cannot tell me, you've not told me why Poiling cannot be enhanced, that you have to tear it down. No choice. I don't see any information explaining that. I don't see that the argument is convincing.
Under Secretary, still on the question of demand of school places. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Junius Ho. Now, for a school with a long history, do we have to reprovision them at another school premises? Actually not. There are other schools with a century of history behind it. Still, we have redeveloped the school in situ and enhanced them. But the condition is that there must be sufficient space as the original site. Now, the Poiling school site is only 1,800 square meters. Now, compared with century-old schools, the school premises are larger with space for redevelopments. There is space for installing new facilities, for example, laboratories and special classrooms. So that very much depends on the availability of space at the site. Dr. Ho mentioned whether we should keep the school as the original site. Now, actually, we have a condition for potential candidates. That is, the school space must be less than 3,000 square meters. Only then will we approve reprovisioning of the school. Mr. Jesse Sheung. Thank you, Chairman. About building a new school in the Fanling North new area, then we need to consider the overall population structure and also the change in the population structure in the future. Now, I declare interest. I'm the founding president of the Hong Kong Association for the Support of Top Talents. We have been helping the talents to find schools for their children. So we need to consider the demand for school places in the future and also the developments of the brand of schools. Now, there is a trend for parents to compete for school places in famous schools. They usually bring along some fringe benefits to the surrounding neighborhood. So I have heard calls from the top talent schools on whether they can be given another school premise to develop. That's a GT Allen Young School. Do you require a reply from the administration? So we have completed the first round of questions from members. There are 2 members who would like to have a second round. There are Ms. Lillian Kwok, Mr. Zhu Guokeng, and Dr. Junius Ho. If there are no other members, after dealing with the 3 members, I will put the paper to vote. First, Ms. Lillian Kwok, 3 minutes, questions, answers included. Thank you, Chairman. I state my support for this project once again. This school is already 65 years old. Like Dr. Junius Ho said, there are some older schools which could continue to thrive with a simple touch-up because there is sufficient space for expansion or redevelopment. Like Mr. Zhu Guokeng mentioned, there are a lot of old schools which are yet to be improved. For example, a school in Sham Shui Po which doesn't even have a sports ground or playground. So we need to allocate resources to schools needing urgent redevelopment. Now, there are going to be 95,000 people in the NDA. My worry is that with more population intake in the northern districts, in the North District and the Northern Metropolis, schools in other areas may face even more serious student shortage. So can we increase the number of classrooms or classes by phases, for example, 10 to 20 and so on? Now, I applaud the government for reducing the cost for school projects. So I hope you would take on board our suggestions. For example, conducting central procurements by combining several school projects together in a lump sum. Under Secretary, I thank Ms. Lillian Kwok for her support for the project. Concerning central procurement, I've answered the question. And also on classes, there are 3 classes at each grade in the existing school. So in the future, we can foresee that the demand will not be less than the present. In terms of the actual number of classes in each grade, we will consider it. We don't have to utilize all the classrooms in one go. We will approve the classes gradually. We'll keep closely monitoring the allocation of school places over the territory. Thank you. Mr. Zhu Guokeng. Thank you. I agree with Dr. Junius Ho that the Education Bureau can allocate more resources to improve dilapidated school premises. Of course, matchbox school is not ideal, but there are also special schools using matchbox school premises. There are 3 in the territory and they urgently need reprovisioning, and also village schools. Some primary school students need to carry an umbrella when they are walking within the school premises in case of bad weather. So the system is unfair. The Education Bureau does not approve canopies in schools. For example, my school, it took 10 years for us to get our flushing system approved. That's ridiculous. We are spending $500 million to build a new school. Why don't we spend a little money to help these dilapidated schools to improve their school campus? Under Secretary, thank you. In terms of repairing, maintaining, and upgrading school facilities, we will continue with our work. Now, there are not a lot of new school premises being built each year, but there are far more schools requiring upgrade and repair. So we'll continue to take forward our school enhancement projects, for example, the annual major maintenance and also minor works projects. We will continue to offer comprehensive support for schools to improve their teaching environment. A simple question, Under Secretary. The Education Bureau has not approved any canopy application. Can the Education Bureau change your policy? Now, these should be asked at the panel on education. This is outside the realm of this proposal. So I have been very lenient with members. However, for policy matters, please ask these questions as an appropriate platform. Still, I have entertained members' requests to raise your views on other matters as well. Any reply from the Under Secretary? Thank you. Recently, as the panel on education, we have consulted members on the 2 proposals today, and also we have had a discussion on our policy on improving substandard schools, school campuses. So we will follow up on members' views. Last member, Dr. Junis Ho. Chairman, I ask why we couldn't conserve and upgrade the Pooling School of the Precious Blood as is. The government's plan is not convincing. It's a 1,800 square meter site. By check on the Google map, next to the school, there is another building. And also there is a 7-a-side football pitch and a basketball court. Further away, there are 2 football pitches. That's the Luen Wharf Market playground. These are all adjacent to the site. Now, the site itself is 1,800 square meters. The building next door is a private building, but nearby there is another 1,800 square meters available. That's my assessment. And also at the Luen Wharf Market playground, there are an additional 2,000 square meters available. You just want to provide a playground for the children. We have the space and we have playgrounds nearby. Just give the school a touch-up and a facelift. It will look very good. And then improve the installations and the equipment. The equipment doesn't cost a lot. Now in Hong Kong, we have descended to a stage that we are demolishing buildings and rebuilding buildings in a worse form. This is a dead end. It takes many years to build a school. Why don't we just utilize the existing space at Luen Wharf Market? It seems that we are being schizophrenic. On one hand, we are conserving useless places like old barracks. On the other hand, you are demolishing old schools. It really breaks the attachments of students to the schools. Believe me, I will check what you said diligently. I will use DeepSeek to check your stories. It didn't check out. There's facilities and available space nearby, and you are spending $490 million on building a new school. I would definitely object to your proposal. In reply?
Actually, with the development of education itself, different schools in Hong Kong at different times would have moving and enhancing of school facilities, etc. Just now, Mr. Ho mentioned the adjacent areas of Pui Ling School, including some community facilities. Can we perhaps requisition those for extension of the Pui Ling School? Well, from time to time, for the schools where they think they can extend to an adjacent site, the EDB would consider that. On hand, we have some proposals from schools which suggest that they can extend their campus into adjacent sites. But there are different needs in the community for facilities, for sports grounds, playgrounds, etc., even though it may be near the school. But there are community needs as well for these facilities. We cannot just extend the school into these facilities sites. So for Pui Ling, we have thought of all different ways to enhance the Pui Ling School campus, but still it is a 1,500 square meters space. And the repositioning to a new site would achieve two ends. One, enhance the learning environment of the school. And secondly, as mentioned time and again in this particular meeting for the new development areas, there is going to be an increase of 95,000 in terms of population with real demand for primary school places. So for the Fanling North New Development Area, we cannot have no primary schools, so that the residents in the area in the future will have to travel to a long distance to go to the primary school, and that would not be in keeping with the principle of schooling nearby. So for this project, it is really to achieve these two ends at the same time, enhancing the school environment and at the same time to be able to provide for school places demand in the new development area. Chairman, I just want to follow up. In the education panel, there was no discussion about requisitioning nearby or incorporating nearby playgrounds and facilities into the school. If you say there was such a discussion, I didn't see it in the paper. As for Pui Ling School, we are not denying that there is a need to enhance a learning environment, but you're provisioning the school to a new site, and you say that the population would be 95,000 in terms of growth, but I don't see that in the paper. Thirdly, I always maintain that for conservation, if you click onto the Pui Ling photo on site, there are at least 7 trees that were planted at the same time or around the same time that the school was built 65 years ago. These very tall trees, will they be removed? How are you going to handle these trees that accompanied the school for so long? I mean, overall speaking, I'm sitting here for 15 minutes and I'm thinking, in more angles than you have been. You have more people thinking on it, but I would say you lack comprehensiveness in your thinking. Your guiding principle seems to be demolish, build, demolish, and build, and who foots the bill? Taxpayers. And this is why I object to the project from conservation, from comprehensiveness in thinking, from cost, and from the works concern. There's no breakthrough. And also, there will have to be this consultancy fee. If you are short of staff, we have over 100,000 government civil servants. So why don't you wait till there is manpower? Why do you have to farm it out to consultants? Yes, Mr. Ho, you should participate in the education panel. I want to, but there's a limit. But you're not a member, but you can speak in that panel, in those panel meetings. And I'll continue to talk about this online. Right. So there are no other opinions. Can we please put this to the vote? PWSC, bracket 2025-2610, paper. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those in objection, please raise your hand. One objection. Most of the members are in favor of this proposal. This proposal is carried. As to whether the Finance Committee should discuss this project according to paragraph 41A of the Public Works Subcommittee procedures, I put this to the vote. For paper PWSC 2025-2610 paper of this Public Works Subcommittee, if we pass this, that is, carry it, we are recommending to the FC for discussion of this paper. All those in favor, please. All those who object to it, please. Those who voted object to this item, meaning they do not recommend that the FC to further discuss PWSC 25-2610 paper. Thank you. We now go into the next agenda item with the service, with the administration team. Please come into the room. This is about agenda item number 2, a 30 classroom primary school at Site E2, development of Anderson Road Quarry Site, Sai Kung. The paper is PWSC, bracket 2025-26, close bracket 11. So this is a upgrading of the project to Category A at an estimated cost of 482.6 million Hong Kong dollars in money of day prices. And there had been a consultation with the Education Department, and it was passed by that department for recommending to the the Public Works Subcommittee for discussion, and that the outcome of the discussion has already been circulated to members. I will not go into the details here, and I will not introduce the administration team. The name list had already been circulated to members. The members who had indicated they want to speak are Chan Siu Hong, Luk Chung Hong, Chu Kwok Leung, Andrew Lam, Lam So Wai, Lillian Kwok, and Doreen Kong. Now, because the time of the meeting was supposed to end at 10:30, and I believe we will not be able to complete the discussion of this item within this meeting. And therefore, after Chan Siu-hong had asked a question, we will adjourn the discussion of this item. And we will wait for the next meeting for resuming the discussion of this item. Yes, Chan Siu-hong, please. Thank you, Chair. Now, if time exceeds 10:30, I might extend the meeting to complete the Q&A of Mr. Chan Siu-hong and then end the meeting. Thank you, Chair. Concerning the development of Anderson Road Quarry Site, Sai Kung, for a 30-classroom primary school for the reprovisioning of Po Leung Kuk Luk Hing To Primary School, I'm in support of this. Now, just now, in the discussion of the other school, the other item concerning Fanling North, we have discussed certain issues, including construction costs. There are some detailed issues which I will, after the meeting, pursue with the administration. Here, I would like to raise the following, and that is the recurring expenditure for this particular school. In the previous item, it was 60 million. And for Tung Chung, Area 89, and Tung Chung, it was just over 60 million, about 61 million. And of course, it was estimated according to the operation at the time, and this is for reference only. But I'm concerned about this particular item. It is 82 million in terms of recurrent expenditure. I would like to know more about this. This particular school is a DSS school. According to existing policy, the school sponsoring body will be responsible for this recurring expenditure. Whoever foots the bill, the expenditure will have to be made. Now, this new campus, after it is completed, for Luk Hing To Primary School. First of all, I just want to declare I'm a senior advisor or consultant of the CLP. And I see that much of the recurrent expenditure is in lighting. The ratio of that is larger. For any new campus, I see that the administration puts in a lot of efforts in providing new models of lighting, energy-saving lighting, and this should be reflected in the recurrent expenditure. There's 80 million plus compared to 60 million, even though the SSB is footing the bill. Why is it so high? Is there room for some savings? I would want to take this opportunity to get to understand that. Is it more solar panels? And that would be perhaps an addition of 1 million, but it still would not make up 80 million, which is very high. Well, thank you, Mr. Chan, for the support to the project. As for the recurrent expenditure of this school, we are really talking about the subsidies to the school. For DSS schools, it would be the unit cost of students times intake of students. That would be the formula. For DSS schools and subsidized schools, there is a difference in the maximum number of students for each class. It would be 33 for the class, but for subsidized schools, small class teaching, it is 25. So we are assuming that the school would have used all the places, all the classrooms, because the total number of students would be 240 more than the average subsidized schools. That's 1/3 more, and therefore the recurrent expenditure would also be about 30% more. For DSS schools, it also depends on their student population number for their expenditure. So whether it is expenditure spent on solar panels, etc., well, it is mainly for staff salaries. The majority of the expenditure for schools, the lion's share, some 70% to 80%, is for staff costs. As for lighting costs, etc., that would be part of the expenditure of the schools, but for a DSS or subsidy school, the difference would not be big.
Chair, may I invite the administration to submit a breakdown of the information just now. Besides the per student, per head subsidy, there is also some funding for lighting, air conditioning, and so on. How are these reflected in the cost breakdown in the paper? Is there room for downward adjustment because of newer designs and technologies? Chairman, allow me. We provide the schools with an amount of funding for flexible use. Now, because of our fiscal consolidation measure, for aided school and DSS schools, we have reduced the funding amounts for schools. But we do allow schools to flexibly deploy these resources. We don't keep a breakdown on the use of the portion of the money, say for lighting, for water utility fees, and air conditioning. We give a lump sum to the schools for the schools to use them flexibly according to their need. If there are remaining balances, these will be rolled over into the reserve. Chair, I understand where the other secretary is coming from. That's for schools, flexibly use of funding. But from the engineering point of view, if energy saving features are introduced, there is a target of 3% cost saving in energy. That's how you design the schools. So after introducing more energy efficient facilities, will they be translated into actual saving in daily operation and help the school sponsoring bodies to save money? Now, all these you are giving me is just estimations. So I look forward to seeing a large chunk of cost saved by schools with new technologies. What about past data or past statistics? Now, energy saving features, for example, this project, Polo & Cook Looking to Primary School, the new design can save some 10% in electricity. And of course, there are many factors behind the cost reduction. So the return period for energy saving is 8 years for this school. Now, because of the different situations of schools, say, for example, their age and spaces, the return period is different, but for looking to school is 8 years. Now, for the project we have just approved, and also the 2 projects we approved 2 months ago, can the government provide us with a chart on the cost saved from these projects? This will help us in terms of other school projects in the future. I think in the previous proposal, the government has promised to provide us with a more detailed chart of the cost and also the relevant costs and also the items with cost saved. This is just for members' reference. Yes, we will do that. Mr. Look, Chair, since we have extended the meeting, the PWSC is working at full speed. Can we have 2 more members to speak? I don't think that's necessary. We have passed the scheduled time already. We don't want to make it a habit to overrun our meetings. So I understand members' concerns, so please be succinct when you ask questions. I'm a very lenient chairman. But please do keep the time strictly. Now, there is no time left for us to finish this item, and also there is another item. So actually, we have convened an additional meeting to be held on the 23rd of June, that's next Monday, 2:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. So that's an extra meeting, so I hope members would attend the meeting on time. So for the item we have approved just now, the funding proposal will be submitted to the FC after July. So I hope that next Monday we will see our members would attend the meeting on time to scrutinize the remaining 2 items. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.